This is Rock and Roll Grad School with your hosts, Heidi Hedquist and Luke Poling. They're just burning, doing the neutron dance.
Hello, kiddies. We are going to have a good time together because today it is Warren Ellis Day, which frankly should be a holiday.
It should be a holiday.
I was going to say national holiday, but there's so many nations I feel like that have benefited from his
Right.
gifts.
It would be something we'd have to go to the United Nations to get approved.
Right. And seeing Warren when we talk to him in his element, the giant beard, the long stringy hair, the photos in his new book of the carved up violin.
Yes.
I would like to see that at the United Nations.
I would too. I think we should book that appointment.
I know. So Warren has a great new book out, and we don't just say great because the person is on the show and we now consider them close personal friends.
Right.
It's all,
really good.
Yeah, it's all about a piece of gum that belonged to Nina Simone, and we kind of go from there.
It's about much more than that, obviously.
It is,
but that is the title and the crux.
Yes.
Way down low, way down low, let the river cast its spell on me. Let the river cast its spell on me.
Had you seen Dr. Simone perform before that night at Meltdown?
No, I'd never seen her perform live. I'd seen her on videos, but very, very few actually, because it was weird, in the 90s before that kind of footage was regularly available.
Right.
It was very different then, as you remember, you had to people had to show you things, or you had to wait for it to appear somewhere, or somebody had to have a video. So no, I'd seen, several performances, but much younger performances when she was much younger.
Mm-hmm.
So no, and I'd never seen her live.
And clearly it had an impact on you.
Yeah, it did.
Do you collect sort of souvenirs from events like that, set lists and other things? To say
No,
nothing
I don't.
of chewable.
No, and even, given that I kind of move in that world, I don't sort of collect, and I come across a lot of people who, famous and things like that. And I never collect anything like that. I mentioned a few things in the book, but they're kind of personal things. Mm-hmm. The only thing I do have is I have a napkin that Charlotte Rampling had a blood nose and bled into a dinner with me and Marianne Faithfull, and I sort of kept guard of her hanky throughout the sort of afternoon tea that we had together. And at the end, she said, "Will you look after this?" And I said, "Yes, of course I will." And she said, "It's called Carnage." And I do have that, that's another little thing that I have, but they're kind of things that are connected to something. But I don't collect tickets or, that sort of thing. No, I don't. I mean, taking it was, a very different act, I think, than just collecting the ramifications of it too from the outset were very different to just taking something to remember a show or something, or having partaken in an event.
Just reading the book, it seems like as soon as you bring it up to anybody else, they understand the sort of talismanic properties of this thing. And you talk about when you're casting it, that everyone wanting to be super respectful and careful with this artifact. Were you surprised that everybody had the same sort of reverence for this seemingly?
I wasn't surprised at the reverence for Dr. Simone, because anybody that she's, touched, anybody that's kind of been inspired by her, anybody who's been moved by her, always speaks about her in such a reverential way. So that the reverence for her, that wasn't, surprising at all. I mean, because as we know, you know, she's one of the great geniuses that's sort of walked on the earth.
Right.
But I was surprised because this little sort of act of taking something was really a personal thing, and you could see, you know, for me it was like watching a holy relic come into recognition, like being discovered. The way that people got under it, and it was such everybody acting with this love and care, and it seemed to me to embody what ideas are in the studio, and what people are. People are in essence ideas, and we need other people to bring out our better selves. And you know that with people, if you say something good to them, it can make them act in a much better way than if you say something negative to them. And for me, the gum, and it was really the nothing that was around it as well. It was everything that people brought to it, because okay, the object was Nina Simone's, but it was what was around it that you can't actually see, that people brought to it. And so and I loved how it captured this communal imagination, and this reverence and this care and this love, and brought out people's better selves. So it all became linked to me, and also the very fact that, like an idea, like, you know, having worked in the studio a lot, and even writing this book, I noticed in the creative process, when you put things out there, that's when they take flight. They need people for them to take flight. You write a book and it sits in the cupboard and nobody sees it. It doesn't exist. It only exists within the kind of imagination of people. So it all became, for me, watching it, it was like a thing that I sense in the studio all the time. It was just a physical thing in front of me happening, and I was really moved by that. And it was interesting when I presented the idea to Faber. I hadn't written a word. I didn't even know if I could write a book, but they gave me a contract on the strength of the story, because they believed in it. And the same thing happened with them. They got caught up in the kind of, I guess, the concept of this nothingness and this love and care. And, you know, I mean, they went to great lengths to make the book a beautiful object. You know, and to present it in a way that everybody felt that it was worth, you know. And that really surprised me, that you know, I think in the book I mentioned, somebody said to me, just listen, let the gum lead the story, it will lead the way. And this was this thing that and it continues to happen now. You know, I'm you know, beyond the book finishes like in December of last year, but since then I've opened a wildlife reserve for animals with special needs in Sumatra. I bought some land and donated it to the Jakarta Animal Aid Network, and I've constructed this place called Ellis Park, Sumatra. It's ellispark.org if you want to see the link. And I bought the land, and we're kind of, I donated it to them, and then we needed to build the park itself. And through just crowdfunding and putting it out there, we've raised 65,000 euros in 3 months, and we're building the park. And it's going to home animals who have been so mistreated in animal trafficking. And we have monkeys who've been locked up for 20 years who've been freed, and they can't be released in the nature. We have a monkey that has no arms. We have bears with no teeth. We have a little guy who, Julio, who got beaten senseless last week by somebody, and they found him on the roof of the building. And since that day we put it up there, we've raised 3,000 euros for his hospital treatment. He's blind in one eye. He's got a cracked skull, and he'll have to live in Ellis Park when we get it built. But my idea is to actually go there and build a really big replica of the gum for the animals to play on. So I love the idea that this spirit of the book keeps informing things down the line, and there's other things that are happening that I can't talk about. I mean, the South Bank heard an interview with me on the radio and phoned up Faber straight away and said, look, we'd love to archive the gum and put it in our archives along with our other Nina Simone memorabilia of when she's played here. We'd like to acquire it because I don't really know what to do with it, because it's sort of outgrown me in a way. And I think with the, it's in Nick Cave's exhibition at the moment, and it will be doing a tour of the world for 4 years. But after that, I don't really know what to do with it, because it'll just, probably end up in the bin like I write about in the book, So it feels like it's reached a greater purpose outside of my orbit, kind of thing.
But it's so interesting to see, like you were saying, the tendrils of this expand, and especially when you're working in a format that you haven't worked in before. I'm assuming, if you talk about the book, the kind of wondering if you can do this and convey the emotion. The book has these great moving passages that, compare to me to something like Some Summers Drop Like Flies, which is just an incredibly moving piece and takes you to something special.
You.
And I think the book does that exact same thing.
Well, Faber were amazing because they let me keep my voice. When I started writing it, and really I had no idea what to do, and I started asking people, what do I do? How do you do this? People I knew that wrote, I spoke to Nick about it, and everybody told me the same thing, that this is part of the process, I absolutely had no experience in writing for 30 years or something like that, or more, 35 years, I guess. I'd never, and that was just trying to write an essay at university.
Right.
But I think actually the book, in a way, it's showing me trying to come to terms with the writing process. And I think it sort of reaches that point where, near the end of it, where I start talking about the struggle of trying to write it. And I like the idea of that being in there, because what's gone on before that doesn't indicate that I've been struggling with it. And I think it plays into this idea that time is not chronological. So, I can start the book with Nick giving an introduction. He starts at the end of last century, and then he jumps 20 years to the gum being displayed. Then I can jump within a page turn, I can jump back 40 years. And then I can flip forward to me and Nick having a conversation in 2019. It can jump like 40 years. And for me, it felt more like a kind of it was like just time wasn't really a relevant thing. That I wasn't a prisoner to the kind of chronological order. And I think that's for me why, I when I started writing, I had no idea that I would have this conversation with my brother 40 years later. But the picture of when I put in the sort of the penultimate photo of us as kids, I realized that kid who experiences these clowns in the start of the story is the same kid that's kneeling at the tomb of Beethoven. There's something about us that stays with us all our life, whether it's a curiosity that we have, or a fascination, or a sense of awe and wonder that can stay with us all our life if we nurture it. And for me, that was something that I hadn't intended, when I wrote it. I really, when I was offered the contract to write it, I thought it was all in the photos, and the text was really just me guiding everybody, because I was so moved by the images and the people's kind of actions that I didn't really think they needed much more than, instructions about what was going on. And that was something I actually hadn't sort of, thought about, but once I'd got that out, it made way for more ideas to come into, and I'd been reticent to write a memoir because I just don't find my life interesting, and I didn't want to write about it. The only kind of memoir sort of kind of thing I had in mind was Dylan's Chronicles, which seemed to me an incredibly generous gift on his part. Like it wasn't telling all the kind of people what they wanted to know, but it went so much further than that. Like what had inspired him when he'd had problems, what he thought were the great moments, you know, and I found that really generous, you know, like and I mean, you know, I like the Klaus Kinski Uncut. You know, there's some memoirs that I do like, but I just personally didn't want to kind of go on about my life, and I kind of conceded and started writing these fragments about myself that were related to why I actually care about music, because it became kind of obvious or clear to me that I had to sort of work out why I cared about music and why I'd actually done this. And it was Warren Moverman, my friend, who is a director and writes scripts, and we had these discussions, like I say in the book, and he said to me, you think it's about the gun, but it is about you and why you did it. And that's what you need to work out with it. And I kind of resisted that for a while, and then realized that actually he was right, you know, and I needed to kind of dig a bit more in myself. And I was kind of at peace with that once I'd sort of seen it finished and realized the book had become better for it.
Mm-hmm. Did you learn anything in your collaboration with Nick over the past, 2 decades, in writing, in conveying sort of lyrically some of these emotions that, you know, perhaps his advice to you, that you were able to glean more from that?
I picked up something from Nick day one, as soon as I met him, you know, like day one. Same with Jim and Mick, you know, with Jim and Mick with 33. There was something from day one that I learned with them, with 33. There was from day one, and I didn't realize it, but there was something that I learned straight away. And with Nick, it was the same. When I got into the studio and, you know, he'd asked me to come in, there was something I learned straight away, was to never let go of an idea, you know, like to fight for it, you know, and being around him, you know, he was already, you know, somebody I really admired, and also, you know, an established artist, and somebody who, you know, for me was such a kind of pure artist, that to be around him and the Bad Seeds working was like such a privilege for me. And, you know, I was able to witness an aspect of the process, you know, that like I say, I felt really privileged to be around. And, you know, I think the last 25 years working with Nick has just constantly reinvented itself, you know, through the Bad Seeds to Scores to what we're doing now, you know, out doing a show, him and me, and with a couple of people playing, doing Carnage and Ghosteen. It keeps reinventing itself because we're both trying to kind of push on to something else the next time. But, you know, I've found every time I go in with Nick, there's something inspiring to be found in the studio.
It's such an interesting conversation that the rest of us get to hear between the two of you. That makes it's just so fascinating to see it change and grow. And in a way, I feel like this book is part of that.
Yeah, I think that you know, when I'd written it, I realized it was a kind of really unusual, also a really unusual look into our friendship, you know, and the way that we work together in a way that an interview, say, about what we're working on wouldn't give. But it was because it was connected by this, you know, amazing thread of with this gum, and, you know, that was the kind of, I guess that's the underlying narrative that runs through it. But it allowed me to look at things around that were important. But yeah, it's an interesting relationship for, it's like 25 years now, and to my mind, the last stuff that we've done, it's the best stuff that we've done too. It continues to evolve, and as long as that happens, then I feel really happy with the way the relationship, and hopefully, if it doesn't, we'll both know.
Do you think you would have wound up, never mind writing about Dr. Simone's gum, but exhibiting it and having this story come out of it without Nick bringing it up in the film, without sort of saying, "Hey, you should show this"?
I think this is part of the narrative that runs through this, is that the fact that an idea is an idea, but if it doesn't get launched in the world, then it doesn't exist. And I don't think if Nick had brought it up in the documentary, I would have thought more about it. It was just something that I had that was just a personal thing of mine. And I immediately after that, there was people would ask me about it and found it rather incredulous, or they were envious, or they didn't think it was real. But again, it was once it was launched into the sort of communal imagination, it took flight. So no, I don't think it would have, and again, it took another step when, Nick asked for something for his exhibition from me, and I suggested that, and he was like, that's absolutely what this is all about. That's the sort of spirit of this exhibition, what this is about. I'd love to have it. And I had no idea that it would then kickstart something else, when I went to get it copied and watching everybody come around getting underneath it. And I really don't think if we had have spoken about it, none of this would have happened. And again, all it talks about is how ideas need that. They need to be exposed, and they need to be carried, and again, it just goes back to the premise of what I saw happening with this was something that I've seen all my life in the studio, but never in such a kind of material way in front of me. I've sat and made records, known that for a moment they're just this little secret that you hold tightly, and then the day before they're about to come out, that's it. That's the last time that you'll hold them privately. And I remember before Ghosteen came out, I was like, wow, like, I really want people to hear this, but I love knowing that we've got this thing just hidden away that, that felt so incredible. And that the next day that's gone, and then it's with people and it takes on a new life. And that's a really exciting moment. But I'd never really, I hadn't seen it in such a sort of physical way in front of me, watching it unfurl, so to speak, and watching people kind of get involved with it, like Andamula Mister, and I guess there are also people who have a sensibility to things, but their enthusiasm and their belief in it also fueled me along as well. And I think it's why ultimately I dedicated it to teachers, whoever they may be, people who show us things. I'm not somebody who was like fully formed like some people are, and they kind of appear and they're like, I want to be a rock star, and that's what they know at a certain age, and that's what they go on to do. It's taken me a long time to grow into being a musician, for what that's worth, or to be a creative person, like it took me, I think, like probably 20 years to even consider myself in that respect. It always just seemed to me like a year by year thing, and I couldn't believe that I would get another year doing this thing that I loved. And then I just sort of forgot about that, and then just kept doing the work. But for me, it's always been about other people feeding me with things and feeding me with the good stuff, that's kind of helped me see a bigger picture or something. And teachers, whether that's a friend or whatever, like just people who inspire us and people who push us beyond what we think we're capable of, people who encourage us. It felt like that's who this book was written for, because that they're the people who've kind of brought out the best in me. And you know, and also I think, given last year, I mean, you know, I got the contract to write it in February, and you know, it was that crazy time when nobody really knew what was going on, you know, with COVID and all that. And when I sat down to write it, I was really like I was so sort of intent on writing something about the wonder and awe of things and the good stuff, because we were just getting bludgeoned with this kind of rage machine of finger pointing and this whole sort of lack of conversation that's going on these days. You know, you don't seem to be able to have a discussion about a lot of things these days. You're just on the wrong side if you want to have a conversation. So I wanted this to be about the kind of the good things. That was really important to me, actually, with when I was writing it.
I think that comes through so clearly, and it's such a lovely journey, and is exactly what you're saying. Like, through even now, it's still, you know, everyone keeps saying like, oh, when we were in COVID, and it's like, but wait, we still are. It's
still
worse.
are, exactly. Yeah,
But,
we still are.
You know, but to have that, and to take something that seemingly is so simple, and the other things throughout the story that seemingly are so simple, but just spiral and have these tentacles that lead to something so much bigger in the way humans interact and love and life. It's really fun and really lovely, and reinforcing that this crap is not what it's all about.
Yeah, I mean, it's true what you say. It's about love and life, and encouragement. You know, they're the things that push you on to do better, you know, to inspire you to do better. It's not negative reinforcement or negative things. I realized at a point, you know, I realized the COVID thing is still going on, but also I realized at a point within there that my job was to create, you know, like that was my way, like of kind of working through it, you know. And I did the record with Marianne, and she'd been sick and with COVID, and Hal had just died, and Hal Wilner had just died, and there was all this stuff going on. And for me to actually sit and write about these things, it was really healing. To sort of close the door on that stuff. And I mean, I was more productive last year and this year than I've ever been in my life. Like, I've made a record with Nick. I just finished a beautiful score for a snow leopard documentary. I've opened this wildlife sanctuary in Sumatra for animals with special needs. And that's just, you know, I can't imagine my life without that now. And it flows on from this story, you know, like it flows on from, you know, I guess opening myself up to these things that I probably wouldn't have done under normal circumstances. Mm. I mean, I was really moved by the sense of community last year, of people trying to help feed people checking in to see if you're okay. I was really moved by that. It sort of felt like we suddenly had more of a sort of communal awareness than we had before. And I mean, I hope we kind of keep going on with that. It feels like we'd lost track of that.
Do you get that sense in the shows you guys have been doing recently that there has been a reset with audiences and that communication is different?
It's really interesting. Yeah. There's a kind of, I think there's a relearning process for everybody. Like, you know, I mean, you know, I get out there and I'm unsure of what thing to hit again and do all, you know, what button to press. And we're also doing a very bold and risky show. We're playing Ghosteen, we're playing Carnage, we're playing some songs from the back catalogue that people, you know, we've never played really before. I mainly playing synthesizer the whole time and a bit of violin, but we kind of went out there with the intent of challenging ourselves, you know, with this, and also that comes with its inherent sort of problems. And you can see the audience too, you know, they kind of know what to do, but they also, we're all kind of like stepping back into it together again, and that's a really great experience. Actually, it's been a really moving thing to start these concerts again. I mean, we hadn't played a band show for 3 years, and I'd done 2 years ago, Nick and I had performed with an orchestra in Sydney playing scores, our soundtracks that we've written. We performed them as suites with the Sydney Symphony Orchestra and the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra, but that was like 2 years ago. So yeah, it had been a good couple of years, you know, since I'd actually sat on stage and been in front of people. And so yeah, I think it's all a kind of I don't know if it's a reset, but we're all sort of like picking up the pieces again together, you know.
Yeah. Well, I want to certainly be cognizant of your time and wrap up, but I debated whether or not to tell you this whole story, but I feel like having read the book, it all interconnects. I saw you in the Bad Seeds when you last played Philadelphia at the Electric Factory, and it was one of those shows where the roof opens up and the clouds disappear, and it's just, you see the full night sky and the stars, and it felt like everyone in this room was having this really special, unique experience all together. And the last song of the night, you did Push the Sky Away, and Nick walked by me to go pick somebody from the crowd and sing to her. And as he walked back, I am not a hem of his garment kind of fella, but I felt the need that I had to reach out and just touch his shoulder as some sort of way to transfer this thank you for being part of making this thing happen this evening. And the same thing I would say to you if we were in the same room. I would creepily touch your shoulder and try to say thank you for helping be an essential part in making this night that it sort of reinvigorated my love of music, my love of live music, to say nothing of the love of the Bad Seeds catalog and diving back in. And I think it was great to read your book because I feel like I was reading it the whole time going, well, he gets it. He understands that exchange.
What a beautiful thing to tell me. You know, I think that's the best response to my book that I can hope for, is that people read their own thing into it, because the stories that it's just my story about things, but I realized in talking to people about it that everybody had their own little epiphanies like this. You know, everybody has their little thing, like a squash cigarette pack that their boyfriend who died 10 years ago, you know, the last pack of cigarettes that they smoked, and they've carried it in their handbag ever since. You know, I've had so many people say that to me, and I like that this book brings up that conversation within a person, within themselves, and they can see themselves in there. And when I was writing it, anytime, you know, just to go back what you're mentioning about the simplicity of it, I at a certain point I was thinking, oh, look, this is just so kind of simple, you know, I need to beef it up. So I tried to write all these sort of bigger terms and bigger sort of, and I ended up editing it all out. I just chopped it all out like as I went along, because anytime I tried to do that, it didn't ring true. And the only time it rang true was when I was just really simple and honest about things, and when I didn't understand what was going on, or the things that I saw when I wrote about them, like, you know, like the room looked like it was on fire to me when I saw her, you know, like that said more than me trying to kind of talk about how amazing it was, you know, or try and talk about what she did, you know, because I couldn't explain that. But my kind of simple and honest reactions spoke much louder than any attempt to try and make something of it. I mean, I don't, there's nothing made up in the book. Like, it's all as far as I'm concerned, you know, every supernatural thing I talk about in the book happened.
Yeah.
It's why I end with a sort of visiting Beethoven, because for me it all sort of stems from there and these supernatural experiences that I've kind of believed in all my life.
So good. Well, and that's it. And people underestimate simplicity, because simplicity is where it's at, I think, because it is what's raw and honest and pure and just how it happened. And that translates so much through the book. It's so crystal clear. Never once was I like, nah, that didn't happen. Like, that didn't even cross my mind.
That's good to hear that.
And I'm a skeptic.
Yeah,
I doubt everybody.
And as you should, you know, like, I mean, I'm a skeptic too, you know, and for me, you know, like I say, like, everything I write about is true as far as I'm concerned, and I wrote about it in the most honest way that I could, and certain narratives kind of started sort of showing themselves to me, you know, like when I thought about the light that I saw when Beethoven's ghost appeared to me, and the light that I saw in the concert, and when I would play, and then it made me think. I remembered this incident with the clowns and things like that when I was a kid. As soon as I thought about that, I found the threads, you know, to sort of hang the story off, and I also had the images to follow as well, which kind of were like a storyboard for me in a way, you know, and I could kind of tell part of the story with that, and then I think the text goes to explain another aspect of the story that the images have in them, but kind of they needed enlightened or something. I really like the kind of also really Faber were great. They let me, like I said, you know, let me keep my voice. They were really, like, as far as editing went, they wanted it to sound like me, you know. They didn't try and tighten it up too much or whatever, but also the things like the screenshots of text conversations, you know, that I really wanted to put in, because it's me trying to work out the process of writing something. But for me, the stories, it's really told communally as well, because all these people I talk about, famous, not famous, whatever, they're all people helping me tell the story. And the screenshots are like, you know, when you get a text that it's just between you and the other person and they're personal. And I love the fact when you look at that immediately puts you into a different headspace than when you just look at the text written out normally. You know, like we're aware of this sort of format now of text being a really intimate thing. Right. And the same with emails. So I mean, originally the first draft was just like, it looked like it was emails just chopped into it and stuff. And they talked me, they said, look, we can change the text, but, you know, I wanted to have everything, you know, like the sort of the email format and things like that. I even had like YouTube links chopped in there, and, you know, like I'd watch this thing and I'd chop it in, and then they said, it doesn't look really good. And I'm like, yeah, but people can sort of like follow it up, and they go, you can't push on a page, Warren. And I'm like, okay, I'll give you that, because I was writing it in you know, on the computer, you know, so it would just lighten up. And I thought, oh, you can press on it and go there. And they're like, people are just going to say like, okay, let me Google that, you know.
Right.
But for me, actually, the book is told by a lot of people. The story is told by a lot of people. And also when I wrote it, I mean, you know, I was incredibly unconfident about the process, and I had about 40 quotes, I think, that I used to kind of signpost things that I would then explain. And so I had like Pasolini and Marcus Aurelius and Beethoven, and I had Anais Nin, and I had my shoe repair, and I had the guy that does my suits, these words of wisdom, you know, that people had said to me, you know, my friend, and, you know, a taxi driver, and I just would put these things in. And then Dan, who was amazing, Dan from Faber, he was like, well, we have to get permission for all this stuff, and this letter from Beethoven, we have to see if it's a correct translation, and da 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 da. And I was like, fuck, I was already struggling to get pictures cleared and stuff like that. And I was having a nightmare with them. And he just looked at me and he goes, look, pick one. I've got an idea. Pick one and we're going to delete them all. And I went like, are you serious? And he goes like, yeah, we have to take the training wheels off this. And and I knew which one I wanted, which was the Lou Reed quote that starts the book, because for me, that's what the book is about. It's like a petition or a prayer, you know, it's like begging for something to come to your help. And that's what this seemed like to me, the book was about. And then he just hit delete and sent it to me. And that was the first time I saw my book. I saw it. It was like that. It was like taking the scaffolding off, you know, or taking the mold off and seeing the gum. So again, it was within the story, you know, like to see the pictures still move me, to see the gum and the first sort of copy, the first mold when she made the little form of it, moved me so much. And it was like that when we chopped all these quotes out, suddenly the mold was gone and there it was. It was standing there. It was like taking the scaffolding off a construction site or something. And it was a really powerful moment. And he just said to me, you say it better in your own words, you know, and instantly the book became something else as far as I was concerned. And it was a really kind of bold thing to suggest. And, you know, I mean, I was so grateful to be having people helping me edit it and things like that, you know, and to listen to them, because if I was a younger guy, I wouldn't have listened, you know. I learned, I think working on Jesse James, that score, that listening to somebody was the best thing I'd ever done. Listening to their opinion about something and telling me that it wasn't good and that it wasn't what they wanted. Because nobody had ever said that before. And when you're in a band, you just do your thing and you don't have to explain anything to anybody. And yeah, I was really, really grateful to have that sort of structure around me with this, you know, to sort of guide me through the process, because it was really unlike anything I'd ever done before in a way.
Traveling appallingly alone on a singular road into the lavender fields that reach high beyond the sky.
Nina Simone's Gum by Warren Ellis is published by Faber and Faber and available right now wherever you get your books. For more information, you can follow Warren on Twitter, where he is at WarrenEllis13. And for more information on Ellis Park or to donate, their website is ellispark.org. The Midnight Monsters EP by Roses and Revolutions is available October 15th. For more information, check out their website, rosesandrevolutions.com.
You can check us out on all the various socials. Be sure to visit our website at rockandrollgradschool.com, and don't forget to leave us a review.
Today's show is produced by myself and Heidi Hedquist. Our reluctant producers are John Sauvé and Sandy Stone. Our willing producers are Rachel Allen and Randy Jeanette. Our intern is Zach Jackson. This one's for Philippe. Thank you, good night, and may all your favorite bands stay together.
And sometimes I hear my name. Oh, where did you go? But the lavender is broad, and it's a singular road. once I was running with my friends, all of them busy with their pens, but the lavender